That's right. Welcome everyone to Rally FC. That's right. The Ghostwriter podcast. That's right. We're the #1 Ghostwriter podcast out of one. I actually looked it up. I could not find another single Ghostwriter podcast. So yeah, we're #1. That is at least until, Blaise Berdal and Matiana Morales come together and kick me out of my job, making their own personal Ghostwriter podcast, because that seems to be the trend right now. But until that happens, I'm going to keep doing this. And today, the person helping me out is another professional podcaster, Alex LaVelle. Alex, how you doing today?
I am doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing all right myself. So, first of all, before we get into our Ghostwriter talk, I do have to ask you a very important question. It's a question I ask all my guests. So, Alex, how much do you hate me for asking you to watch this show?
I actually could graph this.
Okay.
At about the midpoint of episode 1, the graph would be at its highest.
Okay.
And as the rest of the series, or the rest of this set of 4 episodes continued, actually that trailed off and evened out again.
Sure, because it lulled you, you got used to it, and it just kind of, you just kind of nestled in it.
Well, I think it comes down to it picked up the pace a lot, because the first half of that first episode was very slow.
Yes.
But also I did actually watch some of this as a kid. I think probably
I was gonna ask.
Younger siblings had it on, and I just sort of said, this is fine. Sure. I can watch this. It's better than a lot of the other options they would choose.
Sure.
So
yeah,
it was.
I wondered if you had seen this at a younger age, because when this started, I would have been 10. So I watched this from 10 to 12.
I could not tell you the plot of any episode that I watched. I just know that I watched it.
Sure.
Which again kind of reinforces it was probably more something I watched passively. If there's a murder mystery mansion episode, then maybe that is stuck in my brain a little bit, but that's just a trope I love, so maybe I'm conflating things.
No, I don't think so. Their mysteries were never that dangerous. There were definitely ones that they made seem more dangerous than they were, but no, there was an episode that dealt with time travel, and there was an episode that dealt with hacking. Those were
I got nothing for you.
Yeah, no, that's completely fine.
I know I watched it enough to know the premise and the rules of this is how Ghostwriter communicates.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, one thing that we've mentioned a lot is that the pacing in this show is really not good. It's pretty horrible. But a lot of that is kind of by design, because it is a PBS show, and they're very much about let's not just do the thing, let's do the thing and explain the thing while we're doing it.
Well, and I am fascinated by the structure of at least this arc.
Sure.
Because episode 1 takes its time to introduce things, to introduce this plot line, to let us watch children very slowly type in real time words onto a computer.
Yes.
That's the highest point on that graph.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We should tell Ghostwriter what's happening in the panel and explain what sound effects that are onomatopoetic, Ghostwriter should know this, are.
Yeah, and then they stick with them as they do the entire explanation.
In a different world, that's a shot from an episode of Twin Peaks.
Okay.
I've only watched a little bit of Twin Peaks too, but I feel like it's weird enough with the right background music and sort of echoey 90s vibes.
Sure.
People in the background just stare into the camera and blink at you, yeah. But it's the middle 2 episodes that, in terms of pacing, really fascinate me.
Sure.
Because it's like they say, well, we've got this huge ensemble cast.
Yeah.
And enough stuff for 2 of them to do at a time, maybe 4. So let's introduce family drama.
Yeah.
And I am so fascinated, and we can get there. We can get there because I know we're still early in the episode, but I am so fascinated by the morality play family drama portion of this.
Sure.
Because that is the thing that from whatever little bit of this show I remember, I have not remembered at all.
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's kind of jump into this story. We haven't mentioned it yet, but this story arc is called Into the Comics because it is all about the idea of this episode is that Lenny finds out about this comics contest that basically whoever wins gets themselves into a comic book. And I mean, it's so weird because typically the way this show functions is that a mystery comes up and the team spend the whole time trying to solve it. This time there's not really a mystery. They do end up getting a villain of sorts, and really the mystery is trying to figure out who that villain is. And normally this show would function on a, let's call it a Murder, She Wrote type mystery premise.
I was going to ask, like, the thing that I could not fathom being the case would be that this show would always use this dramatic irony of the audience knows exactly what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Normally we would be trying to solve the mystery right along with them. But in this, the show decides to employ more of a Columbo type story process in that it reveals who the villain is in the very first scene. He's actually he opens up the episode with the cold open, and I actually have that clip I want to play for a number of reasons, but let's listen to it real quick, and then I'll explain.
All right, okay, be that way. I'll fix you, Cosmic Comics.
Rejection. You're bad. Rejection. Yuck.
Reject Stoopdude, the mighty monster German Stoopdude. Well, reject this, meatball. And as for your Hoodman comic book contest, it's me who's gonna win. For my man, Stoopdude.
Okay, so like I said, I played that for a number of reasons. Number one, because it introduces us to our villain, who we eventually find out his name is Manny Geit, but he often takes on the character of his alter ego comic book character, Stoopdude. And it took me forever to realize that was the character's name, because I don't know if you noticed in this clip, but it sounds like he's saying Stoopdude. And so, like, for the longest time, I was like, okay, is that Stoopdude as in hairdo or Stoopdude as in doo-doo? I was like, I'm really not getting this. And then, finally somebody else who was more articulate said Stoopdude. I was like, oh, that's what it is. Either way, it's weird.
I believe at one point I pulled up this actor's IMDb page just to see what else he might have been in. Sure. And I think the official spelling of Stoopdude, which we never see written anywhere in the episode except maybe end credits at some point.
We do see it on that letter, that rejection letter that the kids find later.
Well,
but it's written as one word.
And I'm pretty sure his spelling of it is D-O-O-D. That was how it was listed on IMDb.
Oh, really? Because I believe on the rejection letter it was D-U-D-E. But I mean, honestly, that kind of makes sense, especially the way that he was saying it.
And like Stoopdude, you've got the double O in both, like Fruit Loops.
Right. I will say though, when I found out that it was Stoopdude, I was like, all I could think of was Stoop Kid from Hey Arnold. And I'm like, Stoopdude doesn't leave his stoop. Where's your stoop? I like, that name made no sense to me. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not from New York, but I didn't get that name at all. But I wanted everyone to hear the voice that he would use as Stoopdude, because it's a little bizarre. And also, we've talked so many times about the music of this show doing so much heavy lifting, and it was all over the place in that clip.
Yeah, the soundscape of this arc is a thing of wonder.
Yeah.
Can I call it that?
Sure.
At sometimes very impressive, and at other times, at other times I just would say to myself, well, it was the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it actually really helps create the mood. And sometimes it's just really big and in your face. Like, some of those big, like, cartoonish horns towards the end of that clip, I was like, oh, okay. I don't know. It's really kind of setting the fact that this is supposed to be kind of serious, but it's also real goofy.
Well, I have to wonder how much of that is the impulse you see, like, even today in media that is not rooted in comics but wants to do an episode about comics.
Yes.
To pull on really dated design elements. The classic example is biff, wham, pow,
right,
kind of sound captions on screen.
Right.
But those weird horns and strange music choices are really reminiscent of the music direction in the Adam West Batman series.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that was in syndication on TV, if not at this time, until very close to this time, because it is one of the first things I remember watching on TV.
Oh, yeah. This was early 90s. This would have been, I think this episode would have come out in 93. So, yeah, I didn't see that Batman, but I had 4 channels. I do believe that on, like, cable stations and stuff like that, it was still running in syndication.
It ran on Nick at Night.
Okay, yeah.
It ran on Nick at Night with Get Smart and Rocky and Bullwinkle. That was the transition.
Oh, there you go.
From kids programming to adult.
Nice. Yeah, I did really want to ask you about the comics aesthetic in this, because, you do run a comics a podcast. And, you know a lot about comics. You read a lot of comics. What was your take on the comics aesthetic that this episode and this story employed?
It kind of spent time, like, on either side of, I think, getting maybe accidentally, maybe intentionally close to some semblance of reality.
Sure.
And other times just not really making a lot of sense, but maybe not making sense in kind of a wonky, you've got to sort of know how the industry works kind of way.
Sure.
Like, just the premise of the contest that it could be a person wins and 6 people get drawn into the comic.
Right.
That isn't going to happen. That's a flagrant version of it, but, like, part of it is most comic companies now won't even look at unsolicited pitches if you send them to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even a matter of rejection. It's for legal reasons.
Right.
Like, if you tweet at a comic book writer on Twitter or an editor on Twitter with, hey, I think this character you're writing should do that, most of them will just straight up block you right then and there. And if they had a beat like that, have to go change their scripts.
Wow.
So, like, if it's a comics model where they're writing characters that are owned by the publisher,
sure,
that wouldn't happen. Now, if this were a company like Image Comics, which it would have been formed around this time.
Sure.
Image Comics is creator-owned, so you could pitch Image, I have this idea, and they might say, okay, cool, we'll do the, like, business side of publishing it, but you own all the rights, it's yours, we don't do anything but, like, cover our costs.
Right, and it didn't seem to me like Manny was trying to pitch an idea for them to use for another hero. He was legit just trying to pitch his own hero, like his own book, kind of thing.
And of course, that's looking at the industry with a 2020 lens. I will be honest, like, I got into comics later in life in my 20s. I mean, I'm 30, so relatively late, or 33, so relatively later in my life. I didn't grow up with them. I certainly didn't grow up paying attention to how the industry worked.
Sure.
So maybe some of those things were a little different at the time. Here is the most glaring thing. The art, all of the comic book art in this.
Yeah.
And there will people who will take offense to what I'm about to say, and there are exceptions to what I'm about to say.
Sure.
But it was too good to be comic art in the 90s.
Okay.
Comic art in the 90s tended to be like very muscly, and the joke is everyone was covered in 60 pouches and things like that. You had some other stuff that was a little more serious, a little more realistic, like coming out of Vertigo.
Right.
But the general aesthetic was a bit more roided out.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely will say it looked to me, and this is coming from somebody who just has a cursory knowledge of comics, it looked to me like they were going for a comics aesthetic from like a decade back. Like it was very wholesome-ish looking. And I know like the 90s were more gritty stuff during that.
There's a lot of boobs and guns.
Right.
That was the general comics aesthetic.
Sure.
Now, it's funny you say that, though, because I absolutely get where you're coming from with that in terms of, like, an almost Archie or that kind of thing-esque normalcy to the world. But in terms of, like, realistic human bodies on the page, that's something that you don't see a lot of until the last, certainly consistently until the last decade, maybe 15 years.
Sure. Which
brings me to the one piece of research I did very seriously try to do was find who drew these panels. In a contemporary TV show, like somewhere they'd credit an artist.
Sure.
I imagine they would have then too, which tells me someone in the art department who knew how to like render human bodies.
Sure.
Probably drew all of these.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they look good.
Yeah.
Like the comic art in this is actually very well done. The speech balloon placement is surprisingly well done. That is a thing that, like, I've read published comics, usually not from DC or Marvel or Image, but from smaller publishers where they have letterers who struggle with that.
Sure.
So, like, there are things about it that kind of idealize comics, I think, in a way that maybe the industry was not there at the time.
Sure.
And again, everything I'm saying, there are exceptions to a lot of them at Vertigo, but the industry was trying to grow up. It would take it about another 10 years to actually do it.
Sure. Yeah, I did want to ask you, because the first thing, and once again, I'm, just a comic novice, and I know that there have been some ridiculous comic book characters, but to me, Hoodman as a comic book character, number one, I think the name is stupid. And number two, he just seemed a little boring.
Well, I am torn on Hoodman, and I'm going to throw Stoopdude in here too a little bit, right? Like, we don't know a lot about Stoopdude's powers.
Yeah, or what,
we know
what
that Hoodman,
his whole story... I mean, obviously we know what Hoodman is. He's a superhero. But, I mean, he kind of said it in that clip. He said the monster mashing Stoopdude. So maybe he was meant to, like, be like a type of hero, but he came across as a jerk. So
yeah, like, I mean, it definitely sounds like it belongs in that sort of extreme with 3 X's 90s impulse. No E either, just like 3 X's extreme of kind of hyper violent, aggressive. I'm not even going to say idealized masculine body, because, like, I don't know if you've ever seen, or if anyone listening has ever seen, Google Rob Liefeld, Captain America Heroes Reborn. You've probably seen it before if you've spent time on the internet. It is this image of Captain America from 95, 96, where his chest is so large that to have a torso that shape, like, his ribcage would have to extend out about 12 inches from his body, from a normal human body. If you look through, like, Google image searches enough, you'll find people comparing like what the skeleton under that would look like.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It is insane.
This was part of an impulse at Marvel, who was going through financial issues and spent most of the 90s going through financial issues, to rebrand and relaunch and refresh their line, and they hung a lot of that on this kind of aesthetic because it had been popular. I mean, Rob Liefeld was one of the co-creators of Deadpool.
Okay.
So like this kind of extreme thing. You also had, I'll cut the history lesson here short, I promise.
Okay.
But you had the comics code existed for much of comics history. And in the mid-late 80s, roughly, I'm ballparking a lot of these dates. I don't have them in my head.
Sure.
But mid-late 80s, you see the code stop being enforced so much. Maybe even late 70s at some publishers. So you could do more things. You could have moral grayness. Like, one of the things the comics code stipulated was that the good guys had to be identifiably good and the bad guys had to be identifiably bad.
Sure.
Cops could not do crimes. Things like that. There was a lot of very, like, Red Scare xenophobia. But all that is to say, like, I think maybe some of that he bashes monsters impulse is coming from that. This is a little before the time you see the Dakota universe, which is, people would know Static Shock, most likely, if they're not deep into comics. This was a universe of characters created, written, and drawn by Black writers and artists. And I mention it here because I think it is interesting, especially knowing that this kind of representation is something the comic book industry still struggles with. It is interesting that both of the comic book creators we see in this are Black men, because that would have been exceptional at the time, and you don't really see a lot of it. There are, again, there are going to be exceptions to all of this.
Sure.
But you don't broadly see it even now. And you don't really see it, like, the idea of a publisher specifically bringing in Black writer, Black artist, one after another.
Sure.
I don't know that you see until the imprint it's in is Milestone. You'll hear about the Milestone imprint at DC or the Dakota universe. That's kind of the two terms it gets identified as. But that movement that's like Static Shock and Icon and a number of other, generally lesser known, Black characters. And I think some of the, to finally answer your question.
It's okay. I knew we'd get there.
I promise all of that is necessary to say, like, I feel like Hoodman, who, there's a line in the first episode that he gets his powers from his hooded sweatshirt, and also he's from the neighborhood. There's a little bit of that kind of well-intended 90s stereotyping that exists in some of that.
Yeah.
The kind of well-intended that you see in children's cartoons as sort of a lazy shorthand.
Sure.
See also Spike Lee having some very, very basic to the point of banal dialogue about the role of slaves in the Revolutionary War.
The Martyrs Monument.
At one point of this arc.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the one Black cast member goes, "Oh, I know, slaves!"
Yes.
So, setting aside some of the, we want to be inclusive but don't know how to do that effectively issues, I think, like, the Hoodman stands for, do you have in front of you, do you remember, like, the three things that are in his mantra, his motto?
Oh.
They say it at the end of the episode.
Yeah, it's like a stand-up. I know the last one is people with bad attitudes, which I thought
it's like honesty and justice or something along those lines, and people with bad, fighting against people with bad attitudes. There's something in that, and the idea of, like, he's very plain clothes.
Yes.
He's rooted in neighborhood behavior. Like, he's very local street justice. You see it in, like, Spider-Man and some other existing characters. Static Shock's the classic example. Static Shock is a kid who protects his neighborhood and his friends. Especially if you go off of the cartoon that aired. And some of the adults have bigger power sets and are, playing with the Justice League. But it's a very specific, I think, set of qualities and set of design choices that does make me think of these efforts from that period to increase not just representation,
Right.
but to increase actual ownership and the number of places at the table
Sure.
for Black creators. Now, I am saying all of this. I am a white dude who has not a full knowledge base of the entire Milestone imprint and its history. So, like,
Absolutely.
I may have some of this wrong, and I will happily own it if that is the case. But at that very, like, baseline level that I think would be a lot to expect of a viewer of this show in
Sure.
the mid-90s, I think at that level, like, that is maybe a fair comparison.
Sure. Yeah.
As a person who watched the show, like, that's what I would have gotten from it at best,
Okay.
is
Sure.
making some of those connections.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I definitely got, like, the parallel of, Hoodman. Not only, does he wear a hood, but it's also, I mean, they even explain it. He protects the hood. That means neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we know.
I mean, to go to a more contemporary example, even look at Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Miles Morales exists in a span of city blocks in much of that movie.
Yeah.
We see him code switching. We see him connecting with all the people directly in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is an impulse that is not unique to, perhaps, but true of trying to write characters in real-world comics who are from minority groups.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, I'm glad you brought this up. I didn't think as deeply about it, but I appreciate a lot of your points. Yeah, I think that's really important to bring up. I just, was like, that's a silly name, and I think he looks kind of boring.
Oh, let's be clear. Like, the name is not great.
No.
I don't.
No. Honestly, I prefer his villain. His villain is Dr. Kill. It's like...
Which is, again, so 90s.
Oh, yeah.
So 90s.
But, I mean, for villains that, like, Dr. Doom, how many villains, I mean, Mr. Sinister, how many...
Oh, yeah.
How many villains is it just, it's in their name. That's who they are. It's just, I would have liked just a little bit more nuance from the hero, but it's, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, when Darkseid, ruler of Apocalypse, rolls up, there's really not a whole lot of question what he's about.
Evil McEvilson. Yes. All right. But just to get back to the flow of the show, so Lenny calls a rally to get everybody together to do this contest, and it's really funny because like she explains every bit of the contest, but leaves out the grand prize, and they're all just looking at her like, okay, not really into it, whatever. And they start to leave, and she's like, what? No. And then she realizes she didn't tell them what the prize was, and then they're all into it. But so basically, this contest it's basically a scavenger hunt, but it's like the most basic form of a scavenger hunt. They're given these panels that have clues on them, and it's basically, in most of them, they're just words are bolded, and then you put those words together, and it gives you one of 4 possible locations. Or 5 possible locations. They're only going to use 4. Like, if this was me and my friends, I would knock this out in an afternoon. But they've got to fill 4 episodes, so they do basically 1 a day.
Yeah, and it's I mean, they do explain the secret agents or whatever are only at each spot until, 6 o'clock?
Right.
If they're at school, they get off 3:30. They've got to make it to someone's house, usually Lenny's house, to
which it does
go over the clue.
Right. It does seem like at least one of those days they do have to worry about school, but by like the 2nd or 3rd episode, they don't even mention school. I'm thinking, okay, so it must be the weekend now.
Yeah. the last episode definitely has to be like on a Saturday or Sunday because they're like,
definitely.
oh, we'll meet in the morning.
Right. Although these kids do a lot in the morning before school, so I wouldn't put it past them. But yeah, the thing is, the contest is supposed to be for children. It's 16 and under, but Stoopdude, who is easily in his mid to late 20s, maybe even early 30s.
Oh, no, we know exactly how old Stoopdude is.
Oh, that's
because
right.
Because he graduated class of 1988.
Class of 88, he would have been 18, and it's 93. So, that's 5 more years? So he's 22.
He is 23 years old.
23. Okay. 22 or 23, around there, depending on how old he was when he graduated.
Right.
But yeah, so definitely not part of this contest, but, decides that, because he got rejected, that this is his way to get in. Of course, I mean, I guess he believes that they'll just like his character so much that they'll decide to give it its own comic. That's obviously not part of the rules, but he must be hoping for even more than this contest is promising, because it's really not promising anywhere near what he actually wants.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, maybe he wants to say, oh, I saw Stoopdude in a comic?
Right. Yeah, I mean, at the very least. But, I mean, it's still not going to achieve his actual dream of, writing Stoopdude comics or whatever. But this show is full of villains who don't fully think out their plans. Because...
Much like life.
Right. Well, because, like I said, if I were doing this, I could have knocked this out in an afternoon. Because he doesn't seem to have any other job. He lives with his aunt. He keeps saying, oh, this contest is easy. This contest is easy. Yet he keeps ending up behind a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds. So...
In his defense,
okay,
he does have to run down the street to the bodega for his aunt.
A lot.
Multiple times.
That's true.
And also, drawing that set of fake clues that he gives everyone
takes up
would
a
have
lot
taken
of his
him
time.
A tremendous amount of time.
See, that's the thing. If he was more focused on actually winning the contest and less focused on keeping everyone else from winning the contest, he probably would have won a lot quicker.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to be honest, being able to put out a whole page that size in less than a day to pull off what he pulls off
impressive.
Actually would make him very valuable to a comics publisher at the level of quality he does it.
Right.
Matching the house style for this book.
Right.
It is actually, you want to talk about who the real villain of this show is. It's the owner of Cosmic Comics, or publisher of Cosmic Comics, who rejected him in the first place, because clearly he has the chops.
Has talent. Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like he was more rejecting the character. I mean, obviously, this show is going a particular way. They're thinking more about he wants to get Stoopdude made, and, his rejection letter was Stoopdude isn't what we're looking for right now. But, yeah, what he really should have been doing was applying for a job as a cartoonist with their company.
Well, and that, whoever, typically it would be some sort of talent scout who works with editorial, who receives that kind of thing. For them to not have said to some editor, hey, look, this submission came in. We don't need this character, but look at this art.
Right.
We should give him a call.
Yeah.
It is the job of editorial to recruit and create a pipeline to generate content. Which is kind of a crass 2020 way of putting it, but that's the gig. Right. You are responsible for the creative output of the company, and you got to have people who can do it.
Sure. I mean, I will say I agree with you. I think that somebody dropped the ball here, but I think that he definitely failed the psyche eval, because
that's true.
After seeing this episode, I think they're probably going to be glad that they didn't see his talent and hire him, because he cannot handle rejection at all.
It is a trope in comics established by Frank Miller in The Killing Joke.
Okay.
That all it takes to create a villain is one bad day.
Sure.
And maybe the day he got rejected was that one bad day. Maybe if they had said yes, he would be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I don't even love that particular trope, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But, I don't know. They did not do a good job of their jobs. But you are absolutely right. He is an eccentric fellow.
Yes. Oh, to say the least. To say the least. Well, I do want to talk about a couple of things that happen in this meeting, because before they even go to the meeting, in the last episode, we actually met the character of Rob. We got to see that he could see Ghostwriter, and he helped out the team with a couple of things. But when they invited him to join, he basically, was like, no, I don't, teams aren't really my thing, kind of thing. You could tell that he was a bit of a loner. So at the beginning of this episode, we see that he's now hanging out with Jamal, but he's still not part of the team, and he still seems to be a bit reluctant to do so, to the point where Jamal basically has to talk him in to going to the meeting even after he sees the invitation. And, he throws out every excuse. He's like, well, I saw the invitation, but it was in your locker, so, Just like... yeah, he's not gonna go on a separate wall. Ghostwriter's not gonna go on a separate wall and write a different invitation for you. He knows you're there. Come on, Rob, don't be silly. Besides, one thing that we do know of Ghostwriter is that while he can read words and he can sense them, he doesn't necessarily know anything else about his surroundings. So he had no clue he was writing in Jamal's locker. He just saw a whole bunch of words and was like, here, I can use these.
Look, if all you could see were refrigerator magnet letters, that's all you've got to work with. And that's basically Ghostwriter.
Yes, absolutely. I will say, though, in this scene, Rob throws out what almost seems like a bit of shade, because when he first comes up, Jamal opens his locker and he's like, oh, wow, you really know how to decorate a locker. And Jamal's like, oh, well, hey, I've got some extra stickers. You want to decorate yours? And he's like, no, I don't want to pull all those stickers off of a locker. That just seems silly. I'm just like, okay. That's just what you commented.
It was at that moment.
That's what you complimented him for. What's going on here?
It was at that moment that I saw myself in Rob.
Sure. I mean, honestly,
I can appreciate the aesthetic,
yeah,
but I don't want to do all that work when those stickers have dried on. This is why I don't put bumper stickers on my car.
Sure, yeah. No, honestly, Rob, I really appreciate Rob as a character because he's reluctant. So many times in the show, you see in shows like this, you just see kids who are gung-ho and just want to do everything. And Rob, while he has his moments of being fun and silly, he's also a character who you can tell has, been through a lot. We learn in this episode that he's basically an army brat. He's moved around a lot. And, he's had to deal with a lot of, losing friends, which is one of the reasons that he was so reluctant to join the group at the beginning. But I like that they represent this kind of introverted, insecure, yet at the same time has a lot to offer, this character.
Yeah. Well, and I had gathered clearly that Rob had not been around long. Sure. It does make a lot of things make sense, hearing that he was introduced an episode prior.
Just the story before. But yes, we also get a scene between Alex, Gabby, and Tina, where we get the introduction that Alex has twisted his ankle. Now, this is an injury that they mentioned for the first 2 episodes, but apparently it's not that serious, because in the first episode, he's on crutches. In the second episode, he's on a cane. And then after that, it's not mentioned.
I definitely assumed that this was a case of the actor had twisted his ankle.
See, I wondered
and they
that
had to
myself.
shoot around it.
Sure, I wondered that myself, but I think one of the reasons I was so curious about it is because it did end so quickly. I mean, obviously, they probably were working on this episode over a couple of weeks, so it probably did just naturally go away. And also they do just say twisted rather than, broke or anything like that. And I mean, it's been a while since I've twisted my ankle, but that's not usually an injury that lingers for, more than like a couple of weeks, right?
I think that's true. I've never twisted an ankle.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've never to that extent. I can guarantee that.
I cannot think of an example where a character who normally has a full range of motion is put in a cast, on crutches, in a wheelchair, something like that. This arbitrarily,
right,
where it goes away this quickly and without fanfare.
Yeah.
That was not just, they broke themselves.
Right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was my first thought when I saw it, but it went away so quickly, and I was like, that's just so weird. But I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why it did go away so quickly, is because he was no longer experiencing it, so they didn't think about, keep making a deal about it.
Well, the highlight, and I think the thing that makes that argument make the most sense, is the single scene in which he walks with a cane.
Oh, yeah.
Which was clearly there to explain why he's not on crutches anymore.
Right. I was going to say, I don't remember even seeing him use it. I just remember him showing that he had it.
It's very clear that he doesn't need it because he, the human being playing this part, doesn't know how to use it. He doesn't know. It never goes down with the same leg or at the same time as the leg. It's never a part of his stride.
Right.
It's like he'll take a step and then put the cane down like some sort of ghost in a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's never any pressure on it because you'll see the tip of it wobble against the ground, and then he leans it against a table and you never see it again.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I'm convinced, because obviously they didn't think it was important enough to teach him how to walk with a cane, to go through any of this. It just, they wrote it in so that the kid obviously hurt himself, and then, by the time they got to the second and third episode, he was better. So it's let's just keep going. Whatever.
And the most it's ever a plot point is they're all running up some stairs, and it's like, you guys go ahead, I'll catch up.
The Martyrs Monument, yeah. Yeah.
There's no need for that unless you just have to.
Right? Yeah, it's not diegetic to the story. It doesn't come into play really. It doesn't keep them from getting where they need to get in an important moment. The closest we get, like you said, is in that bit with the stairs and the Martyrs Monument. But yeah, one of my thing about this scene here is, though, that we get some great interaction between him and his sister, Gabby. And I say it every episode, but Gabby is my favorite character because she's just so fun. And the way that she ribs him here is just so natural and actually funny. I laughed at some of the things that she said to him.
Yeah, she has a very easygoing presence.
She really does. But another thing that's interesting in this is that we get Tina being sympathetic. Now, I mean, obviously, she's just another person besides his sister that knows that he's hurt himself, so it makes a little sense. But there's also, we have seen them build up in certain episodes that Alex has a crush on Tina. Tina hasn't really said anything one way or another, but with this kind of sympathetic, the way that she kind of dotes on him just a little bit, it makes me wonder if they're putting that in to kind of build, this relationship-ish thing. Maybe this is the beginning of Teen X.
I've always said that children's educational programming. If it's missing one thing, it's sexual tension.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I've never said that. No. No.
I mean, it's not like it's, it's not in a way that it's uncomfortable or palpable.
No,
but it is like, she cares about him. That's nice.
I feel like most TV relies way too much on trying to couple characters for drama or to get people talking on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize the marketing value of it, but it's never the most interesting thing about the show that it happens in, unless it's what the show is about in the first place.
Right.
So, I got to that moment wait a minute. This show is going to do many things, but it's going to do that too? And then that's kind of all we got of it in these 4 episodes, right? It's just a flash in the pan.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, but I will say that they do eventually make them a couple, but it is such a slow burn, and even 4 episodes, 2 story arcs after it happens, you realize that they've forgotten that it happened. So, and then 2 arcs later, they're
I'm here for that.
That's not a thing anymore, right? No. Okay. All right. It's real weird. But yeah, I mean,
someone wrote a letter once and they're like, I guess we've got a page to fill in the script.
You can definitely tell that it was an idea that they had from the beginning, because they do drop in hints here and there, and this is just one of those hints that I caught on to. But yeah, it's definitely, I mean, like you said, it is, it's a show about 12 and 13-year-olds. You don't want to do anything too forward, because then it's real uncomfortable.
Well, and it is educational television.
Right.
You don't want to,
but
I mean, you've got 2 ways to approach this, right? There is, you show a train wreck and hope kids don't take the wrong thing from that, or you try to teach teens and preteens, or realistically younger kids even,
a healthy way,
how to be, not even just how to be in a healthy relationship. We get an attempt at that in this, but how to be in a healthy teenage relationship.
Well, and
Spoiler
not
alert,
even necessarily,
they don't exist.
Right, not even necessarily how to be in one, but a healthy way to approach one. And I will say they don't make all of the right steps. But we'll talk about that when we get there. I do want to talk just a little bit more about Tina, because as these episodes have gone on, like you said, this is an educational show. And, they have given some of their characters different levels of depth. I would say at this point, the ones that come off the most well-rounded, that we know the most about them, simply because of their naturalistic portrayals, are Rob and Gabby. And there wasn't really a whole lot of work that went into it. It's just that those actors came off so natural that you kind of got those people from the jump. But some of the other characters, they've had to give little things just to give them kind of a life. So as we've gone on, we have realized a couple of things about our characters. Jamal is a dork.
Well, duh.
Alex, we realized in the last story arc, is really bad under pressure. And when he's put under pressure, he becomes a jerk.
That's not good enough, Alex.
Lenny has a lot of attitude and doesn't take shit.
Seriously?
And we learned in this episode that Tina is straight to the point, and she likes to have fun, but she also likes to keep everyone focused.
That's great. But what's the clue?
I noticed every single time somebody went on a trail or they started doing this, Tina was the person that was like, come on guys, let's focus. And I'm just like, all right, it's not a super exciting character trait, but it's a character trait. It's something for
every
her.
group needs a stage manager.
Absolutely. Well, and here's the thing. We also know that Tina wants to make videos. videos. She wants to basically be a filmmaker when she grows up. So she is very focused on her goal. And so it really kind of works with that idea. So I just want to say hooray for Tina having a personality.
I hope to have a personality someday.
Right? Wouldn't that be great? But, I mean, you know, like I said, it's not super exciting, but I think that she actually does well in the role. And like you said, every group needs someone to keep them on task. And Tina does that, and she does it well.
Yep.
And she also, you know, that is her way of showing her interest in something is, it's great that we have fun, but let's do this thing, because this thing is important. Let's see. Oh, another thing that we discovered in this episode, that he can't actually see pictures because he looks at the panel and starts asking, you know, what's going on? What do these words mean? What are they doing? You know, things like that. So we already knew that Ghostwriter created text messaging, but apparently his camera phone is broken.
Now, here's my question,
Yes.
though. Can Ghostwriter process emojis?
Process
Or does
like
he just
feel
get, like-
emotions himself?
Not emotions, emojis.
Oh,
like the
emojis.
smiley face.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You mean like emoticons?
No. Well, I mean...
I don't think that he
As
he
I
couldn't
understand
see emojis because he can't see pictures.
So would he just get, like, the Unicode code that means smiley face with one eye winking?
Right, like emoticons. I don't know. This was before emoticons were really a thing.
I'm drawing a very specific distinction here. I'm not talking like colon right parenthesis.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about like the actual piece of code that goes through a piece of electronics that says generate this specific emoji. I want an episode of this. What I'm saying is I want an episode of this where Ghostwriter comes back and he's just like, snippet of code, snippet of code, snippet of code, and they've got to sit down and cross-reference that against what the Unicode expression for each emoji is.
Sure. I mean, I will say they do have an episode where he travels through the internet looking for a hacker, but they never like have him distinguish particular lines of code or anything like that.
Yeah. Also, how does he do with pictographic languages? How does he do with something like, I don't know, hieroglyphics? It's written language, but it is pictorial.
I don't think that he would be able to process it. He just knows the written, as far as we know, the written English language. Alex taught him gracias in the last story, but we have no way of knowing if he would have understood what that was without, Alex immediately explained it. It didn't even give him the opportunity to ask what that was.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I will say a couple of real quick things about the rest of this episode is that we do get, I think you briefly mentioned, we get a special guest in Spike Lee. He is the special agent for the Martyrs Monument. We also, something that I thought was weird. Okay, so before we meet Spike Lee, when they first are looking at the first panel, and there's 4 clues, but they look at one clue that says boat and immediately go to the boathouse. It's the exact same thing that Stoopdude does. And I'm like, and the next day, they're like the first person at Spike Lee's station. I'm like, did everybody make the exact same mistake? Or did everybody else just get a late start? I'm like, what? And also, why did we need 2 characters making the exact same mistake? It just really seems redundant to me.
Well, the function, right?
Yeah.
The function we get there is we see that Stoopdude is not very good at this. No. And he recognizes they are okay. Technically, they're not doing any better than him.
At this point, they made the exact same mistake he does, but he does.
They are competition.
Exactly. He sees that they're also in, which I'm like, did you really think you were going to be the only person in the contest? That's another thing. We only ever see, I think, a max of 4 teams in this contest. There's no way.
There's one scene where one of these secret agents is mobbed by like multiple teams at once.
Right, but that's still only, I mean, okay, so maybe it's 5 or 6 teams.
Yeah, like, it's still not like we see tons.
No, I mean, there would be hundreds of teams, much less individual people, trying to do this, if this was a real thing. I mean, it's in
Kids
New York.
Dumb.
You
what
get
can
a
I
good
say?
turnout.
Never underestimate the stupidity of children.
That's true. There are actually thousands of kids. They just never made it to any of the locations because they couldn't figure out the clues.
Yeah.
I will say another thing that I noticed that I thought was weird is when they get the new panels, they're always given to them in tubes. But by the time we see them, they look like they're on like some sort of poster board. Like hard, flat poster board. I'm like...
Lenny mounts them every night because they always have to go home to Lenny's house or apartment and place them on Claude the easel.
Yes.
And you would think if this were really time sensitive, they'd just unroll the clues somewhere secluded. Yeah. And not go home every time.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, honestly, if it were me, like, I would roll the thing out at the location, find the clues, figure it out, go to the next location. Like, I would honestly knock this out. There's 4 things. I would have knocked this out in one day, especially if I had a group of people with me. But you mentioned Lenny's apartment. It's another one of those episodes where if you don't know the show, and I mean, she did mention Dad, but we don't see him at all in this episode.
Look, Lenny has a successful music career and owns her own apartment.
And she's emancipated.
She's an emancipated minor.
It's fine. She's...
Yeah. Look, Ghostwriter is basically just Friends, but for children and educational.
Yes. Although I will say it's way more diverse than Friends.
Also better. There are very few hard lines in the sand I will draw. Friends is bad is one of them.
Wow, that's right. That was Alex. You can come after Alex for that one.
Yeah. At Alex LaVelle 2005 on Twitter. You can at me.
There you go.
I will die on this
Go ahead
hill.
and at him. Oh, it's all right. All
the
10
only
of our
thing worse
listeners
than
will
Friends.
come after you.
The only thing worse than Friends is when Nick at Night reruns Friends at like 105% speed.
Oh.
So they can fit in extra commercials. And everything's just a little bit too fast and pitched up just a little bit too high.
The fact that Friends is even, I mean, granted now it's like a, 20, 30-year-old show or whatever, but they were running it like 10, 15 years ago. I hate that stuff that new is on Nick at Night. Anyway, I could go on forever about stuff like that. But one last thing. So at the end of the episode, once they have finally solved the right clue, they've got the second panel. But once they get it, they all go home because I guess it's late. And Lenny is at home by herself, and somebody shoves an envelope underneath. She opens it up, and inside is a threatening comic. Now, I will say, if you look at that comic, he saw them for maybe, 10, 15 seconds?
I'm telling you, he's very
He's
talented.
a very good artist. He remembered everything that they looked like in that small amount of time and drew this thing. Now, yes, he is insane. He is off his rocker. And apparently, he is stalking a child, because how else did he know where Lenny lived? So, he needs to be locked up. But, while he's in prison, if he wants to draw comics, go for it.
Yeah. I wonder if there have ever been any comics published from prison. I guess probably not. There are podcasts published from prison.
Sure. I mean,
but I don't know about comics.
Yeah. I mean, I know obviously, art is probably produced within prison, and I'm almost certain that galleries have sold paintings.
Oh yeah.
From people in prison, but that would, especially if it's a comic book company that markets towards children, that'd probably be a hard sell. But yeah, so that is that episode. In the next episode, basically we get a continuation of that story. But you mentioned it briefly earlier. The second and the third episode have B plots, and this is something that they introduced really in the last story arc. The previous story arcs were basically, they were all about that story. There wasn't really any time for any extra story, whereas this one gives us two different B plots. The one in episode 2 actually is hinted at towards the end of episode 1. Basically, the B plot in this one is in episode 2 is that Rob's dad wants him to get into sports. And this is kind of where we get a bit of Rob's backstory about, that they've been moving around a lot, but at least at this point, we believe that, his dad believes that they're settled for the time being.
Yep.
And so he is selling him on, sports, get out there with the guys. The thing is, what's confusing about this is that they take it at two different tacks. Part of it makes it look like, Rob's dad is just really, he's a man's man. He wants his son to play sports. He doesn't get this writing stuff, blah, 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 blah. But then there's another part of it that makes it look like, really, Rob's dad just wants him to socialize and make friends because, he has noticed that his son has become closed off because he moves around so much, and he wants his son, to open himself up. And
yeah, there's very much like a soft sell, hard sell that this arc takes, right? Like in episode 1, when we get that little bit of introductions, hey, they're having baseball tryouts. I think it'd be good for you to be part of a team. Right. And Rob almost says, I think I might have found never mind.
Yeah, he almost,
like that kind of thing.
And honestly, part of me wonders if he had said, actually, Dad, I'm hanging out with this group of kids. We've got our own thing going. If his dad may have, backed off a little bit. Because that is...
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You think it was more the sports camaraderie thing?
I think it's the sports camaraderie thing, and here's why.
Okay.
When Alex says, yeah, I'm taking this class at the community center, I'm into writing, that's when his dad starts pushing back hard and saying, no, like, since when don't you like baseball? If it's not baseball, fine. Football, basketball, whatever.
I mean, he does
and
say, well, writing's not a team sport, which is one of those things that makes me think that a lot of this is that he doesn't want him isolating himself.
But we also know that he is military.
Sure.
And has that sort of physical camaraderie.
Right.
Athletic camaraderie vibe.
Right. Well, and there is also kind of that school of thought that, being with a group of friends is one thing, but being part of a team, that's what's really important.
Right. Like, teamwork requires capital D discipline.
Sure.
And abusive coaches or drill sergeants.
Which, to me, is one of the reasons that I'm a little confused as to how this was settled as easily as it was. Because, there are parts of this that I want to come back to. But eventually, Rob does, basically let his dad know, hey, I'm really into writing. Not only do I just like it, I'm passionate about it. And I'm good at it.
That's the thing. That, I think, is the key here, right? Because I think Rob and his father could have gone indefinitely back and forth saying, I want to do this, well, I want you to do this,
sure.
well, I want to do this, well, I want you to do this.
Right.
But that Rob sits down, taking good advice, sits down, writes a thing, puts real effort into it, and then puts it in front of his father and says, I want you to read this. I wrote this for you. And it is good, and it does what art should. It gives his father perspective. It helps his father see Rob's perspective. And it's a little bit fairy tale moral maybe, but children's educational programming. The value of art is communication.
Right.
And if you have a receptive audience, it can change minds.
Right.
Is it a logical character arc? No. But within the fiction of words have power, knowledge is power, it is important to pursue things you're passionate about, whether it's poetry or filmmaking or the music career that allows you to emancipate yourself and own your own apartment in Brooklyn.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There is power in that.
Yeah, and I will say, one thing I really want to get better at is mentioning the actors in this show. Rob Baker, we haven't mentioned, is played by Todd Alexander Cohen. And I love him in the scene where he gives his father the letter. Because his dad is sitting here reading this thing, and he's just he's sitting in the corner with his arms kind of, one up by his face. Almost looks like he's kind of biting his nails, but not quite. You can tell that he's he's kind of worried, but he also is somewhat assured.
He's the actor watching the critic in the audience from the wings, or the artist watching the critic in the gallery as he looks at his painting.
But the artist knows he's nervous about what his father's going to say, but he also believes in his work. And there's something in his face. He is conveying so much in his face in that moment. It's that kind of insecurity, but also, believing in what he's just done kind of thing. And it's this show doesn't give you a whole lot of these very nuanced things. So to see that performance is really wow, that's really good. And what's really sad is that this kid didn't really do anything after this show.
That's unfortunate. Because we get to see him do this more than once in this episode, too. The first scene at the community center with 2T, who is Double T, who is this poet who has kind of inspired Rob. One, I think, to fight for what he wants, because Double T is without a home.
Right.
He writes poetry on the streets for change, essentially.
For $1.
And he improvises them.
Personalized poems for $1.
And, he's pretty good, in the fiction of the show, at least, but also, what he's doing isn't bad.
No, I mean...
what's written for him in this is not bad. And, there's this scene between them as the class lets out, where Rob approaches him and is like, this is really good. It actually felt like you knew what it was like to be without a home. And he says, well, I am. And there's this uncertainty in that scene too. And I don't know what's right to say. I don't know how to play this social situation, but here are the things that, and I mean, hey, here's why he's good with words. Here are the things I know to be true. Here are the things that are constructive that I can say that aren't going to be insulting in some way or naive in some way. He says, your writing is great.
Yeah. Well, and
he says what
he says it a
an
couple
artist
of times.
wants to hear. He gets back to it. Yeah.
He says it a couple of times, and it's actually a moment of humor, because he says, I really like your writing. It's really good. And Double T's like, thanks. And then he says it again 2 seconds later, and he's like, again, thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, Double T is an example of one of the things I think this show is doing well. Double T is played by David Patrick Kelly, who actually is a frequent collaborator with Spike Lee. He's been in a bunch of his films. And I think,
and Twin Peaks,
yes,
actually,
yes,
oddly
he
enough.
was also in Twin Peaks. Yeah, I think he's also worked with David Lynch quite a few times. Yeah, the way that he plays this character, I mean, I've mentioned it before, but this show at a certain point got a lot of attention and had, some guest stars that were pretty big names. I mean, now granted, this was before he was anything, but in the first story of this show, Jamal's dad was actually played by Samuel L. Jackson. Now, he didn't stick around for very long, because, this was right around the time when, Jurassic Park and, everything else was coming out for him. But, David Patrick Kelly, this was, he was already doing stuff with Spike Lee. But here he comes, portraying this homeless poet, and, brings a lot to this silly little, educational show, because, like you said, what he's given, is actually some pretty interesting stuff. I wonder how much input he actually had into those poems, because we have seen that the writing on this show, especially when they're writing for the children trying to be cool, can be rather clumsy. So I wonder, I don't know if David Patrick Kelly is a poet, but I wouldn't be surprised if, he had some input into, because just the way that he was portraying this character just, was very natural and gave a lot of truth. And, it's kind of brings up homelessness in a smart way, because it's not like he just randomly found this guy on the street and started talking to him. That could be dangerous. He found him in, the community center, found him in, was brought in by a teacher, was introduced to him in a safe way before he sought him out in his own environment. But I will say, we talked about Rob writing the letter, and it was really Double T that gave him the inspiration for doing that. And I want to play this clip simply because it's so funny, because Double T explains what letters are. Let's listen to this.
Do you ever try writing it down? It can help you figure out what you want to say. And it's better than talking sometimes, because you can work on it until you get it right.
Yeah, but then what? It's still just on paper.
Then you give the paper to the person.
Yeah, it's called a letter, Rob. Obviously, we know the situation is more difficult than that, because he's talking about that he's trying to explain. He doesn't say explicitly who it is at this point, but he's trying to explain something to someone and they're not getting it. And so then he's like, well, you're a writer. Write it down. And, it's a piece of advice that in a show like this could have been given very rote and clumsily. But it's done actually in a pretty smart way, I think.
Yeah, the alternative is somehow Ghostwriter goes, "What's wrong, Rob?"
Yes.
And then we watch Rob and Ghostwriter talk about it as floating letters on paper.
Which they've done many times.
Yeah. And I think that works for some moments, but you wouldn't be able to get that amount of detail or nuance that way.
Well, and also, it establishes a kind of a mentor, for lack of better words, in Rob's life, kind of, someone else who gets his passion for writing. Because, obviously words are important to Ghostwriter, but it's not the same thing.
Right. Ghostwriter is about words for words' own sake,
yes.
Not words for art's
Absolutely.
sake.
Absolutely.
Meaning, not expression.
So yeah, that, and honestly, that is Rob's whole arc for this episode. He's gone from the team for pretty much this whole episode doing his own thing, whereas everyone else is figuring out the clues on their own. Eventually, they get a clue from Ghostwriter. They get a clue about the person that sent the threatening letter, basically because it was signed Man E. That's another thing. Why would you sign it? You are sending a threatening note to someone. I'm assuming you want it to remain anonymous. Why sign it?
Because he's proud of his work.
I get that, but still. But anyway, Ghostwriter looks for that signature and he finds the words on his sweatshirt which say, Manny, MHS 88, all the right moves. And I want to talk about this sweatshirt because is it just me or is this and the Stoopdude outfit almost the only thing this dude wears? I'm really just wondering about his laundry situation because I swear, now yes, there are like 2 scenes in which he wears different shirts, but every other scene that we see, in fact, we see a scene where he literally changes out of the Stoopdude costume into the yellow sweatshirt, the All the Right Moves sweatshirt, and I'm just like, really? We're just gonna go back and forth between these 2 things? Are you just washing this thing every day? Like, what's going on?
Well, okay, 1, if anyone's washing it, it's his aunt.
Yeah, it's true.
2, like, the Stoopdude thing is, playing the part, right? He's got to be in costume as Stoopdude to be in the contest.
Right, but he is going outside, and yes, I know it's New York, but he is wearing a sweatshirt while other people are wearing short sleeves. He's probably sweating in that thing. I'm just saying.
That's true. I mean, and the same thing's going to be true for his All the Right Moves sweatshirt.
Because that's what he seems to go to the bodega in all the time.
He grabs it like I would grab a light jacket if it were winter.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, like, honestly, for the longest time, it wasn't until, like, the last watch that I realized he wore anything else. I was just like, that guy must be stankin'. Because, wow.
His aunt's doing his laundry every night. You know it.
I don't know. She seems to be asking him to do a lot of that stuff. Can you run down to the store? Can you run down to the cleaners? She's asking him to go to the cleaners. I'm just saying.
Oh.
Well, I mean,
but maybe that's the exchange, right? Like, I'll take care of the laundry. I've gotten home from work. I want to stay home, but I need something for dinner. Sure. You run down to the store.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
that's not an unfair way to break it down.
He seems to be living there rent free and doing no work. So, and he's like in his early 20s.
I really do wish we'd gotten a little bit more of that story. Going back to the one bad day thing, like, and like, we're both white dudes. Sure. We're coming at this with a certain amount of privilege, but like, why is he living with his aunt? What?
And because she doesn't seem to be impaired in any way. He doesn't seem to be living with her because she needs him. It seems more like a situation
clearly a case of like
where he needs her.
Right.
But yeah, I'm just like, maybe it's let me live with you until I get my artist career started, till like, he seemed to have a lot writing on this thing. Well, and also I'm just like, surely there are more comic book companies. Like, he seemed to be focusing on this one Cosmic Comics. There are others that are gonna, focus on different audiences. Maybe Stoopdude will work for someone else.
I mean, while you are absolutely right, there are still people in the world who struggle with, like, is Batman Marvel or DC? What's the difference?
But if you want a career in comics, surely you know that shit.
Sure, but my point is, if you're a writer on a children's educational television program in 1993, do you know it? Or more importantly, do you want to take the time to explain it to your audience?
True.
Because that is valuable time that Ghostwriter can use to type messages back and forth.
True. All right. So the last thing, so we do see that with these clues, Tina, because she's on the ball, she's focused, recognizes that MHS is for the local high school. So she gets a yearbook And she and Jamal start looking to see if they can find this guy or this person.
I love the logic of how they ask Ghostwriter for help. They say, "Are there any Mannies or whatever in the book?" And Ghostwriter's like, "Nope." And then they're like, "Well, it could be short for something." Well, I guess we better start looking through here. Not
on our own, yeah.
Any names with man in them?
Yeah, I know. I will say though, most other things they look on their own for like it. The way that they portray it, it's like, I've been looking through this thing for hours before anybody's like, we should ask Ghostwriter to help. At least Tina was like, let's ask Ghostwriter first.
And I'll be honest, this arc really feels kind of like Ghostwriter gets to take a vacation for a few days.
Well, yeah, because there aren't a lot of high
stakes. He's not super present.
They're really just being chased by some crazy guy.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, at this point, doesn't seem to be that big of a threat. Although, at the very end of this episode, the last thing we go out on is him tying up a troll doll saying, bound and gagged. And I'm like, are you threatening children? What is going on here? Of course, then we realize in the next episode that how he plays that out is that he actually binds and gags one of the next agents.
I'll tell you what, though, that troll doll scene is the most disturbing thing
it's
in
pretty
this arc.
disturbing. Yeah, it's pretty bad. But here's the thing. He ties up that guy, and it's played like all goofy with like the music in the background. But I'm like, that's still illegal. This guy has gone off the deep end. Like, seriously, this guy needs help.
So far, we're up to fraud, menacing children, and now, I guess technically kidnapping.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't take him away from the place that he was, but he does, take him somewhere and bind him and remove him from somewhere against his will. I think that is technically kidnapping.
Or at least like illegal imprisonment.
That might be closer. But yes, so he does that, and he gives the teams a fake panel, which, like you said, even the kids remark at the end, that panel was really good. And obviously, he made it intentionally confusing, which was the only reason that they were able to figure out that the panel was fake to begin with. But what's interesting about this episode, and I think you were starting to bring this up earlier, is the fact that this is one of the first episodes where the team is split into groups of two for almost the entire episode.
Yeah, I mean, we it's like taking that idea with Rob in episode 2 and then just cranking it up to 11.
Right. Whereas in the last episode, it was really Rob having his own personal adventure, and the rest of them were all together. This time, we've got Lenny and Rob, who are still kind of working on the contest. And then we've got Tina and Jamal, who are going through the phone book. Basically, at this point, we know his name. His name is Manfred Geit. But they look in the phone book, and there are no Manny Geits in there. So they start calling all of the Geits, which we find out later the reason is because he lives with his Aunt Wilhelmina, who has a different last name. But we also have Alex and Gabby off on their own B-plot, basically. The Fernandez parents are fighting. I actually really liked this B-plot because, number one, the Fernandez family is one of my favorite parts of this show. They're just so... They seem like a real family. I mean, yes, a very PBS version of a family, but they seem like a real family. The bilingual nature of it definitely helps. I love the fact, that they incorporate Spanish into their... And, one of my guests brought up last week that it's a very slow, let's make sure all the white people in the audience can make out that we're saying words here. It's a slow version of Spanish, but it's done in a very natural way. And I just, as basic and low stakes as this is, I actually think it was really well done, because we bring up not only a fight, but a believable fight. They are fighting, basically, Mr. Fernandez has taken it upon himself to buy a truck for the store, a truck that Mrs. Fernandez believes is not worth buying, but he's afraid that if they wait too long, then they're going to miss their opportunity, and she believes that they should wait to get something of value. It's a believable
and that
fight.
This will keep breaking down, that it will burn more money because of repairs.
It's a believable discussion. I could see a married couple, especially a married couple that owns a business together, actually having this discussion.
Well, and it's not just believable, but it is truly a discussion with two sides.
Yes.
It's never a he's right, she's right. There is a clear answer. It is, and in the course of at least this arc, we don't learn the answer, because the answer doesn't really matter to what's going on.
No, it really doesn't.
But it is something that is only going to be untangled by having a conversation.
Right. But it also is presented, we see the understandable worry of the two kids who don't remember seeing their parents fight in this way. Yeah. And it's an understandable fear. I get that. Obviously the kids, they naturally go to the worst conclusion of, oh, our parents are fighting, they're going to get a divorce. So, they start doing basically anything that they can control to try to fix this. They start cleaning their rooms and cleaning the store and all this kind of stuff. And their parents still fight. And, when eventually they do kind of let their parents know their fears, their mom sits down with them and has like we said, a very good conversation with them. She's just like, number one, we're not going to get divorced. But number two, it's not your responsibility, which is something that I really liked. But she's like, but I understand why you're upset, because you've known people who have gotten divorced. And then they all just kind of start naming people that they know that got divorced.
I really like that. You liked that. The reason why I like it is because it's not exactly that. It is not just, this is this thing that other people do. Mm-hmm. It is this normalizing moment of, look, it's not going to happen. We are not going to get a divorce. Right. We will work through it. We have those skills. But, and this is not said explicitly, but the fact that they name this friend and this cousin who have gone through a divorce, it does normalize it in a way that says, yeah, but also life goes on.
Right. Sure.
Right? Like, there is, I think, a tendency, especially in, 90s sitcom plots, which this is a 90s sitcom plot, especially in the way that they start, trying to clean up, and the file folder goes missing.
Right. Absolutely.
90s sitcom plots kind of take that idea of divorce as this terrifying, world-shattering thing. And that's not to say it's not, and that's not to say that it doesn't have negative impact on kids. Of course it can. Absolutely. But I think what it does is it says, this is a part of life. It may be traumatic. It may not be traumatic. But, you kids don't have to worry about it. And I think it is important that they name people who they know, even if we don't, because it does kind of show, these are their friends. Their friends are their friends.
They're people who have experienced it.
They're people who they like.
They may be upset, but they're okay.
Yeah. And they're people who these characters see value in, regardless of that.
Yeah, no, that's... I don't know, just the listing divorced people thing just kind of struck me funny at the moment.
No, I definitely get it. I do. There's also a line in that exchange that struck me funny, and I didn't write it down, but to paraphrase, it was something to the effect of sometimes loving someone is having enough time to know is knowing how to fight or having enough time to fight or something like that.
There was a point at which Mr. Fernandez joined the conversation, and they basically said something like, sometimes having disagreements makes things more interesting, and then he's like...
That's it.
Yeah, and then he said something to the effect of, part of what's good about disagreeing with someone that you love is that you know you're going to have time to work it out. Something like that.
And I like that end point of it. And I like within the context of this conversation, again, this kind of normalizing of sometimes conflict happens and you have to work through it. But that one moment of, hey, sometimes part of the fun of loving someone is fighting is, oh man, out of context. Not great advice, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, in context, get it, great, but please don't let that be the only thing that sticks in these kids' brains.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say, I do like the fact that they brought up that conflict doesn't automatically have to lead to the worst conclusion. You can work it out. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean... They stop short of breaking out Hegel in this scene and talking about synthesis and antithesis.
Yeah.
Thesis and antithesis and synthesis, but they walk right up to it. Props for that.
Oh, but yeah. So that's that B plot. And honestly, I think that the kind of domestic part of this show is handled really well. I mean, obviously the plot is always going to be the mystery or the contest or whatever, thing that Ghostwriter's helping them out with. But the actual social stuff that this show brings up, I think they actually handle pretty well. I mean, yes, in a very PBS way, but honestly, you want to learn more from PBS than you do, let's say Friends.
Yeah.
It's a much more healthy way to live your life.
I'm willing to bet that at no point does Mr. Fernandez shout, "We were on a break!"
Yep. Point taken. Oh, but yes. Anyway, getting back to, like I said, Lenny and Rob are... basically, they're the only ones doing the contest. They get a fake panel from Manny. And at this point, we discover that we know that Jamal and Tina have found out the name of the person leaving them the threatening notes. But Lenny and Rob have not met up with Tina. So apparently through Ghostwriter, they communicated his name at least. Obviously, at this point, they don't know what he looks like. It's at this point that I'm like, man, if only Ghostwriter's camera phone wasn't broken, they really could have. They really could have, cut this short.
One thing that this is a good example of, and I'm sure this comes up regularly, but the fact that this show seems to focus so much on not drawing conclusions from just one piece of evidence that reaffirms your immediate assumption. Right. We see it when they're parsing the clues about the aquarium, but then we get it too with Manny. It would be so easy and correct, but easy to assume that he is Stoopdude. Yeah. And while that is the case, I'm glad that the show doesn't just say, well, yeah, he's Stoopdude, the end.
I will say, though, I wish that it was more of them choosing not to jump to conclusions, because honestly, sometimes the show just makes it look like it takes them a while to get there, rather than not jumping to conclusions.
That's right. Maybe it's more a feature of this arc that tends to be how it reads then.
Sure. Because, I mean, it does... I think somebody suggests that possibility, and other kids are like, maybe they do kind of look alike, so it it seems like, I mean, yes, they don't jump on that the first time it's suggested, so that is something, but they do kind of draw them a little thick at times.
Sure.
One other thing that I thought was really funny is in the scene where they finally get the right agent back. He's like, I gotta call this in, and pulls out a massive brick cell phone. And the kid, because one thing we haven't mentioned is that there's one other like featured team that we see occasionally. Honestly, I would have liked to see them a little bit more. I would have liked to see a little bit more, because they've represented more like a healthy competition thing, even though, you know, those kids were, it was silly. Like there was a bit where Stoopdude had led both of them to the wrong place for the agent, and they see our team and they're like, what did you do with the agent? I'm like, who do you think these kids are? They're not Stoopdude. They didn't kidnap him and tie him up. They're looking for him too. But I would have liked to just see a little bit more healthy competition with those kids. But like I said, he just pulls out this cell phone, and the kid is just like, wow. I'm like, wow, this is the early 90s. But yes, they quickly tie everything up. Basically, they have a very short rally, basically just long enough to catch the team up on everything that we already know. And then they're like, it's late, I gotta go home. Okay. But during that, basically, they do ask Ghostwriter to find Manny again. And during the last couple minutes of the episode, he starts writing in clues to Lenny, and Lenny realizes that Manny is in the bodega. So she runs down, and what's so funny is she runs down, and the moment that he sees her, he doesn't like turn around and let her run into him. He doesn't like, you know, walk into her or anything like that. But the moment he sees her, he drops his groceries. Even though he doesn't recognize her at this point, he just drops his groceries the moment that she gets on the sidewalk. And I'm just like, there are so many better ways we could have done that, guys. So many better ways.
And the fact that he doesn't recognize her is frankly astonishing, given how well he did draw her after only having seen her for 10 seconds.
Some of that is probably just bad continuity. But yeah, he doesn't react to her. He might actually recognize her, but he doesn't, because he knows her well enough to know where she lives, which, once again, I'm just going to say, creepy!
Yeah.
But he at least doesn't react to her until he realizes that she knows who he is. But yeah, I will say at this point is basically when the case gets blown wide open for them in the last episode, because while he's there, he has just brought in some weird... He was playing with some masks, and it's weird because when they introduced them, it looked like they were part of his next clue, but then we realize later that, oh no, those are his, because his, obviously, you know, his letters are on the back, and, you know, his name is on them and things like that. But I was just like, okay, apparently he's into abstract art and stuff as well. Not really sure why he brought those with him to the bodega, but he did, and, you know, that's how...
Like, Stoopdude contains multitudes.
Apparently.
Multitudes, if you will.
Yes, there we go. But one of the masks has the rejection letter, which they put together in a simultaneously fun and excruciating scene because it takes them so long. It's like, oh, this is cool, they're solving this puzzle. But it's just like, you know what that word is. Okay, no? Okay, all right.
They weren't typing it, at least, and that's still an improvement.
But we did see them write every letter.
I'm fine with that, because you know what we have not talked about at all? Maybe you have in the past. These children have excellent penmanship.
Yeah. I will say there have been times when I have wondered if maybe, because sometimes, now not all the time, but sometimes their penmanship looks exactly the same, which made me wonder if maybe there was basically a writing stand-in for some of them. There are definitely some that have their own unique style, at least in some of these earlier episodes. But there are times, especially later in the show, when it looks like basically there is one person writing for all of them. I mean, I haven't, that's not official. I haven't looked that up or anything, but that's just what I got from watching.
I could see that, like, especially knowing how, like, sometimes TV props, especially the ones that are pre-written.
Well, and especially with a show
especially if
that
you're writing on something that's pre-written,
writing with children, you know,
yeah,
you can kind of understand maybe doing that. But yeah, no, I mean, yes, I will say that they all print, so that I think is part of it. But yes, it is very good looking handwriting.
I cannot imagine the nightmare that would have been trying to do this show with them always writing in cursive.
I will say that was one of the things that I when I was a kid, because from third grade? Yeah, third grade on, all I ever wrote in was cursive. And I do remember watching this show thinking, why do they always print? That's weird.
I adopted the stance immediately that cursive was some elitist nonsense.
Okay, sure.
Not just because I was bad at it, but also because, I'm sorry, why do we need fancy letters?
See, I like cursive because I can write faster in it. The problem is now, I've been in so many situations where I've had to write for other people that I have adapted print. So honestly, half the time that I write, I switch back and forth between print and cursive. So it's a little, like, if I'm just writing, like, when I write my notes, they're pretty much all in cursive. But when I'm writing, like, if I'm like, oh, somebody might see this, I might switch back to print, and then I'll be like, oh, I got to get this done. Like, it's a nightmare.
Meanwhile, if I can type it,
Sure.
I will.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Because then anyone, myself included, can read it in the future. And if it's handwritten, that's not guaranteed.
No, that's true. But yeah, so this episode, or this story, is tied up pretty quick. Once they figure out his address, they go to confront him and actually get his aunt. They quickly convince her what's going on. And by this point, he has already left to go to the last place for the end of the contest. But the kids have already figured it out before him. They get there and win before he even arrives. I will say, though, this starts a really interesting scene, which I want to talk about a little bit more in a bit. But so many things happen in this last scene because they've already won. They've brought out the head of Cosmic Comics and Hoodman, which they introduce as their the newest teen superhero, Hoodman. And out walks this guy in his 30s wearing a blue hood. And I'm just like, that guy is not a teenager.
I mean, neither is Manny.
It's true. But he keeps lying to people saying that he's 16. Nobody actually believes it. In this, we're supposed to believe that he is a teen superhero. I'm not swallowing that. But during this, the rest of the team, plus Aunt Wilhelmina, arrives. So Stoopdude starts to run, Jamal chases him, and eventually he tries to steal the wishing stone. For what reason? I don't know. And then he throws it up, and he trips and throws it up in the air, and they make this big show of Hoodman catching it, and I'm like, guys, it's a rock. It would have been fine, but
it is like iron pyrite. That is straight up fool's gold.
That's another thing. Like, in the comic, when they show it, it looks like it looks like basically diamond. So I'm like, why didn't they just get like a plastic like diamond or something like that. But no, they get like a rock with like, like you said, pyrite. I'm just like, why did he steal it? Why are we so concerned about Hoodman catching this thing? It's just a lot of really forced drama, but okay.
Look, if the 90s taught us anything, it's that all that glitters is gold. Only shooting stars break the mold.
But yes, and then one thing I do want to mention in this bit is that the head of Cosmic Comics is like, I just want to thank everyone that participated in the contest, and I wanted to let you know that you're all going to receive official Hoodman hoodies, and they're all like, yay! Official Hoodman hoodies, also known as a blank blue hoodie.
Yeah. It would be like saying you're all going to receive official Superman underwear and being handed a red pair of briefs.
That is what? That's the type of underwear Superman wears. That's it.
Just wear it over your pants, and it's just like Superman.
It's really funny.
Unless it's like 2011 to 2016, then you wear them under your pants.
It's true. It's really funny because this is not the only example of this exact same situation happening. Because later in the episode, at the end of the episode, Rob is officially inducted into the team, and they give him his official Ghostwriter pen, also known as a pen on a string. That's literally all it is. I mean, once again, I've done this joke before. Once again, I get that they can't like emboss Ghostwriter on it because that's gonna have too many questions. Although the official Ghostwriter pens that were sold for the show did have like a nice Ghostwriter thing on it. I had one. It was really cool.
Now, I have a question for you though. What if these pins do say Ghostwriter, but because we cannot see Ghostwriter, we cannot see the words on the pin?
But see, the only problem with that is that within the show we can see Ghostwriter. I'm just saying.
I don't think I asked for logic.
But yes, we get and also we do get to see the panel of the kids drawn into the comic. And I gotta say, it's so funny because out of all of them, basically they're drawn in, it says Hoodman and Lenny the Wise and the Friends of Five. But Hoodman is the most boring looking one out of all of them because they all have like masks and like capes and they all look actually pretty super heroic, but Hoodman is just there in his hood.
But there is something Hoodman's design has that theirs don't.
What's that?
It is very easy to cosplay.
It's true. I mean, that they did not have a hard time getting the guy who played Hoodman in his costume. He's like, here, put on this hoodie. This is it? Yep. All right.
Look, I think that the it costume when, conventions exist again.
Hoodman.
Should be Hoodman.
Absolutely. Hey.
I think we should have more Hoodman at conventions than Deadpool.
Absolutely. If anybody goes to a con, goes as Hoodman, I want pictures. And I also want pictures of you trying to explain to someone that you are actually cosplaying as a comic book hero.
My advice, carry a giant chunk of iron pyrite.
Yes.
It will help.
Yes, because then they're bound to recognize you.
Yeah. Do you think Hoodman will show up in the Apple TV Plus Ghostwriter series?
I kind of doubt it. From what I've heard, I don't know a lot about that show, but from what I've heard, it's a lot more about bringing actual like books to life and stuff like that rather than solving mysteries.
So what I'm hearing is they could go into a Hoodman book or bring Hoodman out of a book.
They have dropped every other bit of the original story, so If that's the one thing that they actually take out of the original Ghostwriter, sure, do it.
That would be the best long con. I'm going to sell a Ghostwriter series to Apple and then use that. Has anyone checked? Is Manfred Guide an executive producer on that? Is this just a platform to get a Stoopdude spinoff?
There you go. That's what we all want.
The public demands
Yes,
Stoopdude.
we all want Stoopdude.
Also, pretty easily cosplayable.
Yes, yeah, you just need a
the
big
hat may be
wide-
hard
yeah,
to find
yeah.
in this decade.
I mean, I have seen those hats at like costume shops and stuff like that. And then you just need a sweatshirt, an orange sweatshirt that says SD on it. I mean, nobody will know what it stands for, but
you will.
And yeah, a handful of
You,
yes,
listener
I would.
at home, you'll know.
Although I might just guess Scooby Doo.
You're an SD card.
All right.
You're here with someone dressed as a cell phone.
That'd be great.
The costume plugs into theirs.
Yes, that's how it works. All right. Do you have anything else about this story that you want to talk about?
I do feel like we glossed over all of the penguins. We just need to talk about the sheer number of shots of penguins.
Oh, the penguins at the aquarium.
3.
Sure, yeah, that's a very. I mean,
Like, I'm a big fan of penguins. I was very excited to see.
Yes, let's talk about the penguins.
You asked.
No, I did. You're right.
Just break this up into 6 episodes. It'll be fine.
All right. Well, there are a couple of things that I do want to, a couple of segments that we like to do here on the show. Normally, we would, well, at least last time we did this, we focused mostly on one thing because obviously the fashion of this show, it's from the 90s. This show is very 90s in its fashion. But one thing that usually comes up quite a bit in an episode are Lenny's hats. Now, this episode, though, was a little light on Lenny's hats. She actually only wore 2 hats for the entire run. I will say, though, she had some very interesting fashion choices. But so did the rest of the team. So I decided instead that we're just going to call this Ghostwriter Fashion. And we're going to take a look at a couple of things. You can follow along as we look at these on our Instagram. It is just the Flying Cow Pod on Instagram. So are you ready?
I am ready and just supremely qualified.
Oh, absolutely. I know. I'm quite a fashionista, am I? But no, so in this first one, we have one of Lenny's 2 hats for this story arc. In the last episode, she was wearing kind of like a fisherman's hat that was like flipped up at the bill. This is a very similar look, but it's a much more manageable hat. And it actually has like a bow on it, so it actually looks decent. And then she's wearing this insane like floral shirt. But I mean, it's Lenny, so it kind of works. Lenny's got this very bohemian style.
See, I was going to say it kind of feels like if Willie Nelson got dressed up to go to a Jimmy Buffett concert.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, the hat's a little tilted, I think, for that. But yeah, I can totally see that. I think she'd fit right in with that aesthetic.
Yeah.
All right, well let's take a look at this next one. Okay, so we had this style of hat last time. It's another kufi hat. This time it's much more. The last one she had was much more colorful. This one is basically blue with some small pinstripes, and then the rest of her outfit is also, she's wearing basically just a blue dress. Not very adventurous. This is one of her more like tame looks, but I don't know. I kind of like this one.
Yeah, it's simple. It's straightforward. I don't have anything funny to say about it.
No, I mean, I'm still, I don't know the rules about, because the kufi hat is an African heritage kind of fashion hat. So like I said before, she's not the first white person I've seen wear one. I'm still not really sure on like the appropriateness of it.
Yeah, it did stand out to me in watching it that it seemed like a strange choice, but I also know nothing about like her character's background or where her family is from.
I will say, she's
whatever.
Yeah, her whole really aesthetic is they really rely heavily on that very artistic, her dad's a musician, she's a musician, she's like she's just very eclectic. Like I said, she has got a very bohemian style of dress. So, you're never really surprised what she's wearing. But yeah, let's take a look. Okay, so I included this number one because it's a great picture. This is a close-up of the group. I will say one thing that I do kind of take issue with is that they gave Gabby Vulcan ears. To my knowledge, she's not a Vulcan. Rob also has huge ears in this. I've never looked that closely at his ears. I don't know, maybe his ears are that big. But I'm particularly interested in Lenny's hat because the one time that he saw her before he drew this picture was when she was wearing that first hat. But this looks more like a cross between that hat and a beret.
I think there's an easy answer for this. He's not good at drawing that kind of hat, so he drew a hat he could draw.
Which looks like a crumpled beret.
Every comic book artist has those things they hate drawing. For some people, it's horses. For some people, it's cars. For some people, it's chairs. Like, maybe that hat is just not something that comes out of his hands.
And also, a lot of artists have things that they just really like to draw. Apparently, his are Vulcan ears.
Well, and I'm going to say this. I actually think this is a better hat than the hat she was wearing.
I will agree with that. This hat makes her look very Parisian. Yeah. I agree.
I also appreciate the strong Scooby-Doo energy in this drawing.
There's a strong Scooby-Doo energy in this whole show. Let's just be honest. But yeah, no, the whole, creepy ghost-looking thing peering over them. Also, though, that's an interesting idea because they do have a friendly ghost that works with them. Could Stoopdude maybe sense Ghostwriter? No, probably not.
I mean, I now hang on though. We need to take another hour and play in this sandbox where they go up against an evil Ghostwriter team that can see Ghostwriter and has their own like funky phantom. No, the funky phantom's already a thing. Anyway, the dark Ghostwriter team.
The dark Ghostwriter team. Yes.
The spectral speller.
So this next picture. Okay, so I've got a couple of these that are just the whole team because I want to take a look at all of these looks. Number one, this is our first. Lenny, when she doesn't have a hat on, seems to have a thing for suspenders. This is one of two looks where she is wearing suspenders. And she's also got, looks like flowery bell bottoms. But hers is not the most interesting look in this for me. First of all, don't have a whole lot to say about Alex's. He looks like he just showed up. I also don't have that much to say about Jamal's outfit because I love it. Jamal just looks great.
Jamal's outfit rock. Jamal's outfits in general rock.
Yeah, I will say, I didn't go a lot into it, but as much as I will say that Jamal is a dork because he just tries so hard to be cool and is very much not, he does have a great sense of style. I will give him that. I do want to bring up Tina's outfit because she is wearing top to bottom green. Not a bad color. It's actually, green's one of my favorite colors. It's just a very bold choice. Wearing a lot of green.
Well, really, she is predating the romper trend with this outfit. Like the full body, single piece, single color outfit that I guess you saw some in the 80s, but that's been popular over the last few years.
Kind of like a full body, almost catsuit, but not necessarily as tight.
Right, like pants and top all in one piece that like you have to climb out of. Right. Yeah. And no, that is actually kind of a fun look. But yeah,
I will say the thing is that she's wearing kind of a form-fitting top, but her pants are very baggy, which is...
I mean, that I'm just going to blame on the 90s.
Yes, absolutely.
Look, if you didn't have room for a second person in your pants were not baggy enough.
It's true. But the look I really want to take a look at in this picture is Gabby's. Because...
It's perfect?
I mean, that's not exactly the words I would choose. It's very interesting. It's a choice. Because...
It's a strong
choice. That's right. Because she's wearing she's wearing a baseball cap, just like her brother. But her brother is wearing, I would assume, some team cap. Hers is just orange, just solid orange. It's also like real big build, and it doesn't just sit like it. It almost looks like it's eating the top of her head. Like it's just sitting as... Like
she is wearing one of his hats, or an adult's hat.
It looks too big for her, but it also looks tight at the brim. Because the bill is kind of poking up. It just, it simultaneously looks too big and too small. But then she is also wearing an orange top that is then like tucked in but bloused out of her very short jean shorts that have some sort of like colorful trim around them. But below that, she's wearing, I don't even know what those are, because they're not...
They're like bike shorts.
Okay, that come out below her jean shorts.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really common thing that you would see at the time, even up through like when we would have been in high school.
Wow.
I'm sure people still do it now. Like if they're wearing skirts and are worried about like their skirt riding up, they'll wear bike shorts underneath. I'm pretty sure
that she's just wearing...
Or coming out of shorts.
It's just, I mean, I guess especially for a kid, it's an interesting look. It's quite and I'm on record for being all on board for Gabby, but that is a look.
I think it's an excellent look. I think it is. And here's really the point, right? Like this is design theory for animation and children's TV shows. You want all of your characters to be recognizable in silhouette, or if it's animation, or in terms of live action. You typically try to kind of code them to a single color of clothes or a single design aesthetic.
I think my biggest issue with this look is it is not typical of Gabby. Number one, she doesn't wear a lot of hats, and this just is it's a weird look for her. Because, I poke fun at a lot of Lenny's looks, but I always acknowledge the fact that it very much fits in her aesthetic. I think one of my biggest things with this look is it's very atypical for Gabby.
That's fair, but you know what? I'll say this. I think it's good for people to experiment with clothing choices, and if that's what she's doing here, awesome.
All right, well, let's take a look at...
Because it's a good look.
All right. So then you've got the second suspenders look from Lenny.
Love those
I was about
pants.
to say, her pants look like she basically took abstract art and then wrapped them around her legs.
Another great choice.
I was about to say, it looks great. It's odd. It's not something I would choose, but it works for her. And I will say another reason that I like Rob is because he wears the closest in this show to things that I would probably wear, with the caveat that he probably wears more interesting pants than I ever would. I think these are like camo, although I do have some camo shorts. But like as far as his shirts and stuff go, they're just normal. And it's like, yep, that's my look. And yeah, once again, Alex at least looks a little bit more interesting in this. Doesn't look like he just rolled out of his trailer. And once again, Jamal wearing a Malcolm X t-shirt, looking great. Yes. Okay, so I had to bring this one up because do you recognize the shirt that Lenny is wearing, Alex?
I mean, if it were solid white, I would think, hey, it's the puffy shirt from Seinfeld.
I was about to say, it is a blue version of the puffy shirt from Seinfeld. Like, straight up. And I think this was either a little bit before or right around the same time as that episode would have been.
Yeah, it would have been a close call.
Pretty close, but yeah, definitely got puffy shirt vibes. I think she's got a few less ruffles on the arm, maybe.
Yeah.
And once again, solid choice with the pants. It's like some sort of plaid. Pretty cool. And she's also, we can't really, I mean, doesn't have them on, but we can see on the top of her head those very 90s looking sunglasses with the circular rims.
Yeah.
Or frames. Not rims. They're not cars. Okay, so I wanted to bring this one up. And it just so happens, of course, that this happens to be the clothes. This is Alex and Gabby. This just happens to be the clothes that they're wearing during their B-plot, where they're worried about their parents splitting up. But I wanted to bring this up because I do not know what is going on with Gabby's shirt. It is green on one side, red on the other, with a huge black pocket on the left side. Like, I'm talking, like, it's basically the size of her head, this pocket. And then Alex looks like he's ready to go clubbing.
Now, see, this was another outfit I noticed while watching. And again, like, I think Gabby is nailing it.
Okay.
I feel like this is a very period-specific early 90s costume. What you can't see in the picture is the back half of the shirt is solid black, and she's wearing black pants. This was a very iconic kind of 90s look where you've got big chunks of color, and you kind of let those two big focal points do the work and keep the rest sort of sedate.
I will say...
No, I'm here for this.
I will say I like this in the fact that it is much more her style. My only thing is, and I'm probably going to cut this out because I don't like referencing this show, but it looks like if you ever watched the Cosby Show, it looks like a Gordon Gartrell.
That's fair.
And not the good version. I mean, but yeah, Alex straight up looks like he's about to go clubbing. I'm just saying.
See, you say clubbing, I say hitting the craps tables in Atlantic City.
Yeah, that actually might be more Alex's speed.
Like, this shirt, I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to be, and to be clear, I kind of love it.
I was about to say,
he's making
it's not
it work.
a bad shirt. It's not a shirt I would wear, but it's actually a cool looking shirt. It
has this sort of like, if you drew the Venn diagram of 70s casino and 90s fashion, this would exist in the overlap of that Venn diagram. That is where this shirt comes from. And like, especially in this picture you frozen, he's got this kind of like, smooth look on his face.
While sitting next to his sister,
Yeah, not great in context, but...
One other thing I do want to point out about this picture, though, is that it looks like, according to this picture, Gabby seems to be the only one that is changing the look of her Ghostwriter pen. Because I noticed earlier, I don't think you could see it in the picture, but when she was wearing that orange outfit, the string of her pen was orange. And in this one, it's white. All of the rest of them, if you notice, it's always black. So she's accessorizing. She's playing around. Okay, I wanted to show this one. I think this is the last one of the team, because Rob has straight up Elvis hair in this episode. Like, literally.
He and Danny Zuko are gonna go, like, work on Grease Lightning.
He looks like he just came off the set of some movie set in, like, the 50s or the early 60s, and then came right to his job at Ghostwriter.
Kid's got hair game.
I mean, it's great. It looks great. I will say the whole rest of the episode, or the other story arcs, it does not look like this. But for this entire episode, it's very Elvis friendly. Okay, so I just had to throw in the looks of Manny Geit, the apparently only two looks that he's comfortable sporting. We have obviously Stoopdude in the orange, and his chest shirt that he refuses to stop wearing, even though he graduated 5 years ago. on the other side.
I think the most important detail in this image, which we have not acknowledged so far, is that when he's not wearing the Stoopdude costume, it does live on a mannequin in his room.
Yeah, it's a little disconcerting, to be honest.
Hat, sunglasses,
Yeah.
sweater, pants, all of it goes on a mannequin, which presumably when he needs to get in costume, he undresses.
Yeah.
I doubt he's got, unless he's pulling a Doug Funny and has multiple sets of the same clothes, which would solve
Solve
problems.
I was about to say at least he wouldn't. We wouldn't be so worried about him smelling.
But that mannequin, I'm sure has horror stories.
If that mannequin could talk, it would say, "No, don't let me talk." Oh God!
If that mannequin could talk, it would sing some Stephen Sondheim songs. That's a deep cut.
Oh, geez.
Evening Primrose.
Okay, I did want to throw in a double T's look because what I really like about his look is that if you just looked at him, you wouldn't necessarily think homeless. He could be homeless, but he could also just be an eccentric artist. In his case, He's actually both. But he looks like he's wearing some sort of army jacket that's been, decorated with different patches and stuff like that. And I don't have a picture of where the pants that he's wearing, but basically, baggy cargo pants, and then this do-rag contraption that he has on his head, which is a very interesting. I'm not entirely sure how that was achieved.
I mean, it kind of looks like loose fabric that was tied off in a knot on the side of his head. Yeah,
because I mean, I'm not entirely certain that it's one piece.
It could be multiple.
I don't know. But yeah, definitely, if anybody can figure out how this was done, let us know. Because I'm going to cosplay as Double T. I need to know what's going on. No.
Well, you can go hang out with Hoodman and Stoopdude.
There you go. And then I included this poster so that we can see what Hoodman the comic looks like. Also, there's a nice little picture of Ghostwriter. And then also the 30-year-old live-action version. I don't know. This guy might actually be in his 20s, but he's definitely not a teenager. That's the whole point.
Also, at least in this picture, that blue hoodie reads a little purple.
A little purple? You think so?
Yeah. It may just be the screen cap coming through meat.
Sure. And then, like I said, I'm also including the panel that the kids got drawn into. And I mean, Hoodman is by far the least interesting looking character in that panel.
What's, I think, worth noting maybe is 4 of the kids' designs definitely feel like very specific comic book characters, and 2 do not.
Yeah, I believe...
Like, Jamal's is very Green Lantern.
Said that his was patterned off of Green Lantern.
Rob's is very Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
I assume they're in purple. That's supposed to be Lenny, which is very Amethyst Princess of Gemworld. And then Gabby reads as like kind of an X-Men costume.
She looks like an X-Men of some type. I wouldn't know exactly which one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But then you get to Alex and Tina, and I don't know, maybe they were looking at some 90s costumes that I'm just not familiar with, but I could not tell you who they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like the pointy mask on Tina's a little bit Wolverine,
right? But obviously,
or a little Wolverine or Psylocke or Betsy Braddock. I'm sorry, Betsy Braddock is or Scarlet Witch. There we go. Like it's a masked shape you see, but that's about it.
All right. Well, let's move on with this marathon podcast, shall we? All right. So a couple of segments that we like to do. First of all, Alex, who would you say is your top suspect? The character that you either liked the most or you thought was the most interesting, just your top suspect for this story.
It's Stoopdude.
Okay.
Anytime Stoopdude was on, I was just enthralled.
Okay.
Even at the darkest moments of episode 1, when I was cursing your name a little bit, I'm like, Just gimme more
Really?
Stoopdude. He can get me through this.
See,
Second choice, his
okay,
aunt.
well, Aunt Wilhelmina. I get that.
She's chill. She tried to chase him down. There's this great background shot of like her running, holding one of each of the other kids' shoulders. She's pretty cool.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, the second time I watched it, I did find him a little bit more entertaining, but the first time I watched this story, and honestly, this was one of the few that when I started watching it, I was like, I don't remember this story at all. But I remember finding Stoopdude really annoying. Like I said, I found him more entertaining. You know, I've watched it like 3 times through now. And I found him more entertaining every time. But yeah, I'm glad that you liked him because he was an acquired taste for me.
He brings a very specific kind of chaotic energy to the show that I was here for.
Well, and then for that reason, my top suspect was the character that brings peace to the chaos. I gotta go with Tina. I don't know. I know it's like she didn't do a whole lot in this story, but it was kind of like the moment of clarity for me where I realized what Tina's place was in this team. It just really made me appreciate her. So yeah, I gotta give it to Tina. You know, she's the voice of reason. She's the one keeping them on track, keeping them on focus. She is never gonna be the one to jump to conclusions. And in this show, that is a good thing.
It's a solid pick.
All right. So what then was your rewind moment? The moment the scene that was either your favorite or the scene in the show that made you go, what?
It has to be, and if I need to narrow it down to one scene in this plot, I can. But the Fernandez divorce B plot, I was not expecting the show to go in that direction. Like, the double T thing makes sense. Like, it's a show about words and writing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. But the sort of family drama piece, out of left field, thought it was super well done. If we want to get down to a scene, the scene in the kids' bedroom where their mother talks to them and then their father comes in, like, that can be the scene. But that whole piece of it was just...
Yeah, no, it's really well done.
That, it made me go, what? Right? And it was well done. So it both sides of the question, I think it covers.
All right. Well, mine has to be that contest final scene, because there are so many things in that make absolutely no sense. First of all, I didn't talk about it in super in depth, but Stoopdude starts running towards the contest and Jamal is running after him. Stoopdude starts running around a pole and Jamal just follows him. They both are just rotating around this. I'm like, what are you doing, Jamal? What are you doing? And then he grabs the rock, the wishing stone. I'm like, why are you grabbing that? It's nothing. It literally means nothing. And then the whole like, oh, we gotta save the wishing stone. It's a rock, people. It's just a rock. It's okay. It won't even break if it falls. It's all right. It's just like, I mean, it is so forced drama. They're really trying, but at the same time, it's so ridiculous that it's actually very entertaining. So yeah,
now
that's my rewind moment.
I do, while we are rewinding, need to ask a question, though, that has not come up. Is the "and now Lenny sings" moment a staple of the show's formula?
She does it a lot.
Does she always end a case with a song?
She doesn't do it every episode. I mean, there's literally a list. You can find a list online of all of the episodes. It's almost every other one. I mean, like I said, a big part of her character is that she is a musician. So yeah, she does.
Because if it were not normal for her to wrap up an arc with a musical number, that would become my what moment.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the second time that she's done it in 4 stories. So, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I think in a couple of stories, they're going to repeat a song that she did in the pilot, which wasn't widely seen. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, it's a weird thing, but once you kind of get that's her. Like, honestly, when we were introduced to Lenny, she was writing a song. So, yeah,
cool.
We just didn't get to see her really. If we don't get a full song with her, we almost always get at least her writing or doing something music-wise. I think one of the reasons that they threw the song in at the end is because they just wanted to be like, oh, for people who haven't seen this show before, Lenny does music.
Yeah, and I don't think it's strange in that context. It's only strange if this is if without context you get to the end and you're like, wait, what? They're singing now? Do they always do this?
Yeah.
Got to slip in a little Josie and the Pussycats with that Scooby-Doo?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I got a question for you, Alex. If Ghostwriter were real and he wrote to you, would you write back to him? And if you would, what would you say to him?
Spaceship emoji, eggplant emoji, Belgian flag emoji. Question mark?
All he would get on that is the question mark.
Not necessarily. He could get the Unicode crossover. I'm very curious what he gets. If he responds to me with similarly jumbled letters, I would know. I'd have an answer to this question. It's the scientific process, and I think he would respect that. I could explain that after the fact.
You just want to know if he can read emojis.
I do. If nothing else, like, we can work out, I can give him a list of what the Unicode means.
Sure.
Be like, yeah, that's a heart. That's a rocket ship. I don't know that you know what one looks like, but you know it takes people to space or brings space aliens here.
At least in this episode, they established that he just flat out could not see the images.
So it would really be more working from the definition of the thing for him, but you know. I feel like understanding emoji is going to be very important for
in the
Ghostwriter
sure.
in, you know.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, God forbid kids would actually have to learn to write their thoughts rather than, just heart, squiggle face.
Sometimes, though, heart squiggle face says it all.
Sure. But not to Ghostwriter. All right. Okay, so, with that being said, the mystery of Ghostwriter's identity is something that is kind of woven into the show throughout. Some episodes talk about it more than others. Some give certain clues as to who he was, although it was never actually revealed on the show. But it was often a question. So with that being said, with what you know of Ghostwriter, who or what do you think Ghostwriter is?
So, as a child, I thought Ghostwriter was
an alien.
But,
okay,
yes, but as an adult, I have an appropriately Grant Morrison comics-esque answer for this episode. I think he is a fifth-dimensional being who perceives our reality in a very different way from us, i.e. only through the written word. And because he is of a different way of perception, only has a limited way of interacting with our world, in the same way that, if we wanted to interact with something at a microscopic scale, we would be limited in the way that we could do that. He exists, by definition, then out of time, or with some control over time. And I think probably if you saw him in his native environment, would look like some sort of multi-tentacled word beast.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, leaning into the comic book for this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I wouldn't expect anything less from you.
The floaty, glowy, two-dimensional circle that we see fly around is really just a cross-section of one of those tentacles grabbing letters and rearranging. Warping space-time.
All right.
You'll notice that sometimes he'll take the letters and spell out a word, then like shuffle those letters behind another object and different ones will come out. That's him pulling those letters across space-time from all the other times he does that. So it's a very clever trick of quantum manipulation.
All right, that is definitely one of the most interesting versions of that answer that I have heard. That's good. All right, well, with that being said, like I said, it was never actually revealed in the show, although one of the creators did eventually give an interview where he revealed what the identity of Ghostwriter was intended to be. Do you want to hear that?
The dead ghost of Wishbone. Or as I prefer to refer to him, Bonedict Cumberbark. Yes, please. I would love to know.
So, in 2010, Ghostwriter producer and writer Kermit Frazier revealed that Ghostwriter was...
Well, see, now I feel like an asshole for my joke answers.
Okay.
But also now I'm like recontextual. You know what, though? In the context of this episode, like, there was one very specific shot that was like, my reaction to it was, that is a little strange.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, no, I get that.
That is definitely some unexpected context.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Most people have a very similar reaction in that they're like, "Oh, that's cool," but wow, that's dark.
Huh. I never would have guessed.
No. All right, but yeah, let's moving forward. I do want to go ahead and give everyone the opportunity to get in contact with us if they would like to. I am the Flying Cow Pod on everything. Twitter, Instagram, the Flying Cow Pod at gmail.com. The Flying Cow, you can find us on Facebook. There's a group on there. And just contact us and ask us any questions that you might have. It'd be great to hear from you. And Alex, I'm going to go ahead and give you the opportunity if there's anything that you would like to plug for yourself. And then, of course, if you are enjoying anything in pop culture, and you don't have to, but you are fully encouraged to emphasize anything that is uplifting the voices of women or people of color.
Sure. So... to answer the how to find me first, Twitter, that's about it. Honestly, I exist on Facebook, but do my best to avoid it because it's a garbage fire.
Well, and I wouldn't ask you to give people your Facebook. That's fine.
I mean, it's my name, but that's not going to get you anywhere. Alex LaVelle 2005 on Twitter. I do co-host a comics podcast called Panelology. I also host if you enjoy revisiting the media of your childhood, an Animorphs reread podcast called Minds at Yerk. And then I talk about Rob Thomas's body of work, specifically the one who does TV shows, not the one who occasionally performs with Carlos Santana. On the Rob Thomas, no, not that one, Robcast, we're currently talking about Veronica Mars.
Veronica Mars, very fun.
As for media, I always have to give some comic answers, so like comic book answers. So Bitterroot is a fantastic ongoing series right now with a creative team that is 3 men of color. It is about monster fighters in the Harlem Renaissance, and it's very much about racism and the anger that comes in response to racism and how that affects a family's history. A little more mainstream, if you haven't watched Lovecraft Country yet. It's produced by Jordan Peele. Misha Green is the name of the screenwriter and director of the first episode. And then it follows, its main characters are all black. Journey Smollett is the female lead and just steals the first episode. It is about kind of actually sort of similar thread to Bitterroot. It is about a man who fought in, I think it's got to be World War II in the TV show, although I think it was Korea in the book. It may be Korea in the show. We have it, there's one episode. It hasn't gotten into it yet. He comes home to find his father, who's gone missing in Lovecraft Country. His uncle writes one of the green books, the books that tell Black people and people of color where is safe to travel in the U.S. And the two of them and Journey Smollett's character go to Massachusetts to find his missing father and run into straight up Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It's reclaiming the racism of Lovecraft and his work as metaphor for everyday racism in the United States.
Yeah, I have seen the ads for it, and I'm very interested to check it out because, like you said, Lovecraft, at least we know now, was a well-known racist. And so the idea of, telling this story through people of color, I think is apt. So I'm really interested to check that out.
Just to quickly correct myself, the screenplay for episode 1 was Misha Green, who's also a producer, but it was directed by Jan Demange.
All right. Anything else?
I mean, I can add another 3 hours recommending stuff, right. But I don't think you want me to.
One set of 3 hours, I think we're good. All right. Well, like I said, I kind of went on a binge of stories profiling, the struggle of Black people in this country, and saw a couple of films that I'm surprised I hadn't gotten to, but was really glad that I did. So I'm going to give you the 1-2 punch of Selma. Tells about, Dr. Martin Luther King and the Selma March. Also, Spike Lee's Malcolm X. I had never seen the film. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it is still, but it was. Either one of these you could find on Amazon or somewhere else for a moderate price to rent. But I really enjoyed both of these movies because there were a lot of things that I thought I knew that I realized I didn't. A lot of things that I took for granted that I learned a lot about. And obviously, movies are movies. You gotta then do the work to find out the true story as well. Did that as well. But as movies as well, they're very informative, very good. And I would suggest anybody that wants to check those out.
I'm going to throw one more suggestion out there. Mexican Gothic. It is a novel by Silvia Moreno Garcia, who is a Canadian-Mexican novelist. It uses Victorian Gothic novel tropes and sort of eldritch horror elements and fairy tale elements to tell a story set in the 50s in Mexico about colonialism and racism and sexism and how they overlap and intertwine.
Nice.
It's good and creepy and strongly recommend it.
All right. Well, next time we will be back with an episode that sees the return of Double T, the disappearance of Double T, and somehow Rob ends up in an abandoned subway tunnel with some blonde girl. Not sure what's going on there. The episode is called To the Light. You can feel free to check that out on YouTube. The link is in the description. Alex, thank you so much for joining me for this 3-hour podcast. I don't know who's going to listen to a 3-hour podcast about Ghostwriter, but we're going to find out.
Well, thank you for letting me hold you hostage for 3 hours to talk about Ghostwriter.
No problem. All right. Well, with that, we are going to let Lenny take us out. You guys have a great time. Ghostwriter, out!
Come on! Hoodman! Just a fell from a comic book, but that's not all. You better take a second look more than